everybody, and welcome to day 48 of 50 days until I am 50. On this day 48, I wanted to tell you what came to mind for me for day 48 is communicate. One of the biggest things that I've learned that we have a terrible, that we're kind of terrible at is communication. We communicate sometimes in a way that either is to benefit someone else, or we have a very hard time to communicate our true feelings, our true self, out of fear of what others will say or do. What if this time, every time you are faced with communication or communicating something that is on your mind, you just communicate the truth, whether it hurts them or not? It is really hard to do. Communication is, I remember when I was doing some training and development for a company, and we did an exercise about communication and the way in which it worked. There's about 15 people in the room, just to show you how communication can really get messed up. Is that what we did? We did a little exercise. You can actually do this with your family. You could do it with a group of friends. And what we did was you started off at one end of the table and you whispered a story in the ear of the person. And that person was then to whisper it into the next person and so forth. And it is amazing how when it got to the last person, the story was nothing as it was originally told. Just to show you how communication can just turn horrific. So on this day 48, I tell you to learn how to communicate. Learn how to communicate clearly. Learn how to communicate your message so that people are getting exactly what you want them to get. Don't beat around the bush. Don't lie. Don't finagle what you're trying to say and so forth, because out of fear. Don't fear your communication. Making something clear can be the best thing you could ever do. I'll give you another example of why communication is so key, especially for people that are single or dating, is that if you have an idea of something that you want, you have to communicate what it is you want or hope for in that relationship. Because what could possibly happen is you're making one assumption, the person is making a different assumption, and what you realize is that you've invested all of this time because you failed to communicate what you were hoping for or what you were looking for. Communication can be, really sketchy sometimes, because then it's the proper time to communicate things, right? Because you don't want to run people off. You don't want to turn them off. You want to make sure that timing is right. Because when I was younger, you don't want to tell somebody on date 2 that you want children, right? You don't want to even talk about kids. It's like understanding the right time to talk about certain things. But you need to make sure you keep a mental Rolodex of the things in which you want to talk about, and just don't assume that things are going to work out a certain way due to your lack of communication. It is if I haven't learned anything in my 50 years, is that communication is key, and you can't leave a door open for people just to assume whatever. I tell you something else. One thing, because I'm always very transparent in everything that I do here, is like one of the things that I've communicated to people that I date is I'm not moving. I'm not moving. It is a done deal for me. I'm not signing my name to another mortgage. If you want to move, it's cool. I don't want my name on that mortgage nowhere. Been there, done that. Don't want to go down that road again. Some people, that's what they want to do. No matter how old they are, they still want to purchase a house and live their lives and different things like that. But for me, being a person that went through such a financial tragedy, that I just do not ever want to go down that road again. And part of it is being faced with, mortgages and stuff like that. Like, I'm so done with that process. So it's like, and for another reason, it's also like important that you communicate what you see for your life. And this is why you get to be able to see if people match what you hope for and different things like that in relationships. I want to travel. I want to live my life and get on planes and go see the world and different things like that. If I confine myself to paying a mortgage of $2,000-$3,000 a month, that just cuts into what I hope for the rest of my life. So it is imperative that you communicate these things to individuals really early on so that they can make a decision if this is something that they want to do or not do in their lives. I think this is also part of the reason why I would be cool with never getting married again if it meant that I had a great relationship with someone where he had his own space, I had mine, and we come together, as a couple, but we just don't live under the same roof. Like, I literally am not moving. And I've made that very, very, very clear in every relationship that I've ever been in. I've had, some men get the ego thing, where they're like, oh, I'm not living in another woman's home and this and that and the other. But then when they start looking at things from the perspective of what I'm saying, then it's like, ding, 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 different things go off in their heads and like, oh, yeah, 2,000 square foot home, mortgage is like less than $400 a month. Like, the balances, they start looking at their own financial picture and say, you know what, that's not a bad way to look at stuff, But, to each his own, there's still a lot of old-fashioned men out there, but it doesn't matter. You have to be in a position where you communicate your life goals, what you hope to achieve, what you're working on, what is time-consuming, what's not. Now, I'll tell you something else that tied into when I was on the dating scene and dating people. Here's something that came up, and it was amazing because when it got communicated, it changed the whole perspective. I'm a person that's into diet, health, and fitness. It becomes very hard to date someone that is not really into it like you are. So if you choose to date someone that doesn't work out, that doesn't want to eat right, that doesn't want to take care of themselves, and it could cause some conflict in your relationship sometimes, especially when they're having difficulty doing things that you love doing. I experienced this firsthand where someone from my past, this was a long time, a couple years ago, I started communicating with a friend of mine that when we studied our PhDs together, I knew him from back then, knew him from way back then. So when I knew him from back then, this was a guy that was fit and so forth. So here comes years later, and lo and behold, he's gained about 60, 70, almost 100 pounds. So here I am, top of my fitness game. I've lost 105 pounds, and he's coming to Philly, and we cannot do anything because it's August. He's out of breath. He can't walk the city. Well, to me, that turns into a major problem. And I had to communicate that to him, that this would be an issue. So that's why I say, like, you can meet people. I tell you something else. People that don't have children and you're not having any more and don't want any more. If you're not communicating things, understanding the timing of communication, you could run into a major problem where you're actually hurting someone, you're hurting yourself, and then you end up wasting someone's time as well as your own. So if you're clear, if you're very clear about your personal position on things, don't be afraid to communicate what those are. And to my men out there that are dating someone and you know that their goal in life is to be married and they're giving you the time, effort, and everything to prove to you what type of wife that they can be. And if you are just sitting in limbo and coming up and dealing with this issue and that, and basically coming up with excuses as to why you won't propose, why you won't get married, You have to communicate the honesty that this probably will never happen. But if we lack the communication skills to be honest with ourselves and be honest with the individuals in our lives, it could just cause for a big disaster. So I tell you, in 2019, on this day 48 of my 50 days until I am 50, I am telling you to brushing up on your communication skills and make sure that if there's something that needs to be communicated, do it today. Communicate what you need to communicate, and trusting yourself that once you release yourself of whatever needs to be communicated, you'll feel a lot better. Work hard to get that communication in check. All right, everybody, on to day 49. See you then.